Kia ora.
Mr Speaker.
I call the Honourable Nanaia Mahuta. Tēnā koe, Ms Mahuta.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Tuatahi tēnei ka tāpiri atu aku mihi ki a koutou. Ko uru mai nei I roto I tēnei tō koutou whare ki te whakarongo ki ngā kōrero e pāna ki tā koutou kre me tiriti. Nei te mihi mai o haki a koutou katoa. Mr Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to join with my colleague Meka Whaitere and Reno Tirikātene and the ministers to be able to support the passage of this bill and make it law. None of us in the House could hope to express the rich tapestry of history, good and bad, that have led to this point in time. I suspect people have been up very early travelling to get here. I suspect that there's been a lot of excitement of people to say, finally, it's done and we can move on. I suspect that there are a lot of kaumātua who are thinking about other kaumātua who are no longer with us, because this is an important day for you and it's an important day for us. And it's a day to not only remember history, but it's a day to celebrate the future and what your children and grandchildren and mokopuna will be able to hold on to, because this is an opportunity as well. I wasn't on the select committee for this particular bill, so I thought, well, actually what I'd like to do is have a look at the cultural redress components of your settlement, because often that is the place where the stories are told, where histories have been retold and will continue to be retold. And it's a place where if New Zealanders were interested enough to know what was happening in their own area in relation to treaty settlements, they would go to the cultural redress components of treaty settlement legislation. And this is what I found. Interestingly enough, with the help of Google and the help of my colleague Meka Whaitere, I managed to find a number of very interesting things. Firstly, I remember in the by-election, Meka and I were travelling through her electorate. I don't know how many kilometres she'd already travelled, but we went past Lake Tūtera. And, you know, seeing is holding on to things. And she proceeded to tell me stories about the area and Lake Tūtera and things like that. And I noticed that a significant component of your treaty settlement is the vesting of 4 lake beds. Back to yourselves. Lake Tūtera, Lake Orakai, Lake Waikoropiro, Lake Arohamai, Lake Waikōpiro, Lake Opauahi. Now, as I used my Google engine, I said, well, gee, Lake Tūtera, I remember we went past that, and I found that both Lake Orakai and Waikōpiro were close by. But a further investigation shows that they are on a number of websites. When New Zealanders come to look at the Hawke's Bay and see what they could experience, these are some of the lakes they get steered to, because there's wildlife there are walkways, there's access to these particular lakes. And if you weren't a frequent visitor to the Hawke's Bay, Lake Tūtera might be a reason why you would want to go there. And I found that particularly interesting, because I thought, well, if these are being vested back as reserves with public access, then why are people going there? So I had a look, and there's a Wildlife Act over the lake, and it makes particular mention of people being able to use the lake, but you can't have powerboats on Lake Tūtera. Well, I didn't know that, but it does then give me a sense of the fact that people enjoy this place because it's a place where you can experience nature, wildlife around it, but also utilise the lake in ways that people get good enjoyment out of. Now, we have a connection, albeit remote, and it's through Lake Opauahi, because I understand that around the lake there's a pest-proof fence. I much rather suspect that pest-proof fence might be the same kind of fence that we've got at Maungaharuru in Cambridge. And the whole idea of the pest-proof fence for Maungaharuru was to regenerate and repatriate natural wildlife into the area, so that you can keep the predators out and get our wildlife back there, and there's stories in that. Because I suspect it's a place where our tūpuna gathered because of the wildlife that were there. Maybe the kai that was there. So that's our connection, albeit remote. And I was really interested to see that on your websites around restoration, around preservation, around telling stories, and it's all in Google, there are a whole lot of activities that have already happened about what you are already doing prior to the treaty settlement about repatriating things that belong there in ways that you can be very proud about. And then I come to some of the statutory acknowledgements and deeds of recognition. Now here's a story or two. The peaks of the Maungaharuru range are there are so many pictures on Google that actually, again, it's breathtaking and it makes you want to experience and have a look for yourself what is to be shared in the Maungaharuru range. But it's the Maungaharuru Scenic Reserve that I want to come to. Interesting, I found out with a little bit of research that the background of the reserve was connected to the Aropawanui block, which was in the New Zealand Gazette in 1860 and had native title extinguished, but there was going to be a reserve put together. So I'm weaving kind of back through the history, finding this out. And what it indicates is that this is perhaps the reserve of Maungaharuru. But when I go back to our history here in Parliament, there was a petition that came before Parliament by Peter Bloomer. And he petitioned the Māori Affairs Select Committee in particular because of the lack of access for Māori to get to their sacred sites. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And in 1987, at the time, it was the former member for Te Taitonga and Reno's auntie, Whetu Tiri Kātene, who made a point of actually ensuring that that petition got some recognition by the Department of Conservation at the time. Interesting, because then what it indicated was that, yes, this was a reserve, yes, it had sites of significance, there needed to be an opportunity to ensure that Māori could continue to go back to the reserve, because at the time it was seemingly under Crown Land administration, and it was supported by the Māori Affairs Select Committee in terms of reviewing that particular petition. So we do have walking access there in that particular scenic reserve. And I thought to myself, golly gosh, if you're reading through the deed of settlement and just read the name, the Maungaharuru Scenic Reserve, you wouldn't have any sense of what really was happening in this area and kind of all the kind of, I guess, bureaucracy that had to be got through to be able to repatriate important sites of significance back to people. So again, I reiterate, I'm but a humble newcomer to the full extent of the rich history that you have within the context of your settlement. But can I say, again, and reiterate in support of your treaty settlement, that anyone who would want to have a glimmer of the essence and the rich tapestry of history that belongs to you, the people of Maungaharuru, Tangitu, Hapu, then go to the cultural reduced sector of your settlement. You have done well to get to this day. A lot of people have worked really hard, both within your team, and I guess mention has to be made to the Crown officials and OTS that you've had to negotiate with, but certainly the Minister for your effort to get this progressed as speedily as possible. I wish you well. I know that the future will look bright, but more importantly, when your children tell their stories, they can visit their places with pride and know that those stories can continue to be told to their children and their children after them. Tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora.
The Honourable Chris Tremaine.
Tihai Mauri o rā.